I'm Jerome Davis. I'm the Artistic Director of Burning Coal Theater Company, and I'd like to welcome you to our Lobby Lecture Series. We're here today to discuss the events that led to the creation of the Murphey School Auditorium as the permanent home for Burning Coal Theater Company. This has been a lengthy process. I'm going to ask the people here on our panel to introduce themselves first and tell what role they played in the process.
I'm Greg Paul. I was the general contractor for the project.
I'm Curtis Casevan, who's the theater consultant on the project.
I'm Peter Rumsey. I had chaired the Downtown Housing Improvement Corporation when its executive director, Greg Warren, first came to the board and said, I am interested in trying to preserve the Murphey School, and then he added, I want to preserve the auditorium as a center for the arts. Greg is not able to be here today. I'm standing in on his behalf.
I'm Louis Cherry with Cherry Huffman Architects, and I was the project architect.
Thank you all for coming today. We had many other people responsible in part for the success of this project, but these are the primary players. And so what I thought we would do to begin is have a brief overview of the history of the building that we're sitting in. And for that, I'm going to turn to Peter Rumsey, who not only was the president of DHIC for a long time, but also a long-time Oakwood resident.
And I must say, it is a delight to be able to walk over. Terrific. And do the sessions of the board.
That's what we're aiming for.
Of the theater. Murphey School was built in 1884, named after Archibald Lowe Murphy of Caswell County, a state senator and an early, if not the earliest, advocate of public schools in the state. And either in 1908 or in 1915, there's some confusion, the school was destroyed by fire and then rebuilt. When rebuilt, was the first fireproof school. And that is of great significance because despite the efforts of the state through neglect to hope that the school would go away, the concrete structure persevered. And consequently, the school was here when in the 1980s, Greg Warren came forward as I described. Of great significance is the fact that in 1960, this school was the first school in the Raleigh school system to be desegregated. It was done so as a result of a motion that was introduced and passed by the Board of Education. That motion introduced by J. Willie York, the father of the past mayor and a strong supporter, Smead York, of this school of the theater. The school was desegregated by a young kindergarten student, Bill Campbell, who later went on to become the mayor of Atlanta. His brother, Ralph Campbell, sat on the city council and then later state auditor. And the Campbell family, and indeed the round table around which they sat in their kitchen, has now been saved as part of what I think to be the great legacy of the civil rights movement and its contribution both locally and then nationally, provided by the Campbell family and the many other families and members of the Raleigh community. It's worth noting at this moment that the DHIC was created in the late 60s, early 70s, when we had our first African-American mayor. We had passed fair housing legislation that is still in place. The DHIC was created as an organization to promote affordable housing throughout the region and the Raleigh area. So we see a rich legacy that goes back to a period of time when the country was in tumult. And for a southern city, I think Raleigh had taken great steps to position itself then, and we are now the beneficiaries of that effort today. In 1973, despite all the good intentions about preserving the school board sold the school to the state of North Carolina. It was later used as office space for employees of the NCDOT, the Department of Transportation, until it was vacated in 1984. clear picture of why it was vacated or why the school was discontinued as a school, I think we'll find in that history discussion of what was the changes that were occurring in the pattern of living in the downtown area, partly a result of the desegregation efforts that were undertaken throughout.
I was under the impression also that Wake County took over the school system from Raleigh City Schools in 1977, and that was the year that this school was closed, simply because it wasn't large enough for their purposes. I don't know if that's a true story, but that's one of the the urban legends that is associated with it.
One of the pleasures of a circumstance like this is we compile an agenda of things to be considered and reviewed and developed. The state government master plan showed demolition of the school with surface parking being provided on this site. In the late 1987, Smedes York and Settle Dockery first examined the possibilities of developing this as a condo. They were not able to make it work at a market rate. In the spring of 1988 was when Greg Warren approached the board and then began to put together the coalition that resulted in the saving of the school. The coalition included the Preservation North Carolina, the Oakwood residents, Smedes York, and a number of others, including the Lieutenant Governor Bob Jordan. The bill that was introduced.
Would you say Ralph Campbell was a part of that?
Ralph Campbell was very much a part of that. And there was introduced in the legislature a bill that languished until virtually the last hours of the legislature, which time Representative Peggy Stamey and others, led by Representative Dan Blue, the black Speaker of the House of Representatives, prevailed, and there was passed the legislation that allowed this school to be leased on a long-term basis to the city, to then the Downtown Housing Improvement Corporation. From that point, the DHIC proceeded with the help of Louis Cherry and the York Construction. Simon Dixon was the superintendent. Clearscape's Architecture were also involved.
Yeah, that was actually before our involvement.
Okay, you were involved with the actual development of the theater.
Of the theater, but not the previous.
Clearscape's with Stephen Schuster and David Lauer were then the architects at that point. On December 15th, 1990, Murphey School was dedicated, providing studio apartments to 52 low-income elderly. The dedication was held in the lobby of the theater, and at that attended Ralph Campbell, Bill Campbell, J. Willie York, Dan Blue. And I must say that in my relatively brief period of time as a Raleigh resident since 1977, that I think was really a unique coming together and celebration of the progress that has been made here in the city, and specifically with respect to the Murphey School itself. The next moment that for me was a transformative moment was the opening celebration of Murphey School itself, where many of those same people were brought together. Jerry came forward to a board of the Oakwood neighborhood group many years ago, and you can fill in the date, but I was sitting on that board, and brought forward a proposal to have the Murphey School have the Murphey School become the Burning Coal Theater home. And it was at that point that I, just as when Greg Warren had approached me initially, realized that this was going to be a dream that was going to be fulfilled. And at that point, the Oakwood organization threw its weight behind the Murphey School, behind the creation of the Burning Coal Theater. And that brings us up really to the present, or to the past, Jerry, where you and others can say